Repeat is brought to you by Silicon Dust, makers of high-quality digital TV tuners. Stop overpaying for TV. HD Home Run is TV viewing on your terms. Watch what you want, when you want, including HD and protected content all around your home. Time shift or watch live, it's TV your way. Visit www.silicondust.com for more information. The 1970s were many things to many people. There was a lot going on: feminism, the gas crisis, Star Wars, Pong, CB radios, cable TV, and of course marijuana. Mark Brazil, Bonnie Turner, and Terry Turner dug deep into the wells of their own lives during this era to create a television show that would immortalize the decade across 8 seasons. The half-hour comedy sitcom was titled That 70s Show. I'm Shane R. Monroe, and this is Repeat. You may not be familiar with the name Carsey Werner Television, but the independent studio has been providing television with great programming for over 30 years. Marcy Carsey and Tom Werner collaborated together at ABC in the 1970s, shepherding such shows as Happy Days, Barney Miller, Mork and Mindy, Taxi, Dynasty, and Soap. Said Carsey, "We found if you wanted to produce good television, you had to do it in a unique way, ignoring the trends and trusting your instincts." Unquote. In November of 1980, Carsey, senior vice president of primetime series at ABC, decided she wanted to create her own production company. She took out a second mortgage on her home, left ABC, and was succeeded by friend and co-worker Tom Werner. Within a year, Carsey had convinced Werner to join her as an independent producer, and in 1981, Carsey Werner Television was born. The first year of business almost destroyed the company. The 1981 Writers Guild of America strike occurred, lasting over 3 months, which kept talent and work away from the fledgling studio. As with many other independent studios, Carsey Werner created shows that were sold to the networks. Their first show to hit the airwaves arrived at ABC in 1983 and was titled Oh Madeline, featuring a then big-name celebrity, Madeline Kahn. Their breakout success came later in 1983 with the enormously popular smash hit The Cosby Show. In the early 1980s, Bill Cosby was a well-known stand-up comedian with a couple of fairly successful television series to his credit, but to the TV networks, he was deemed risky. Carsey Werner believed in Cosby, his brilliance, and everyman appeal. They were right, and their confidence in him was rewarded with a show that, beginning in 1984, became a consistent ratings leader, is credited with single-handedly reviving the sitcom, was the genesis of NBC's must-see TV, and has become one of the all-time classic TV comedies. The independent studio went on to create other memorable and profitable shows, such as Roseanne, A Different World, Grace Under Fire, and superfan favorite Third Rock from the Sun. In 1998, Carsey Werner Television got the distinct honor of having sold shows to all 4 big networks when they produced a new show for Fox called That 70s Show. Carsey Werner Television had worked with Mark Brazil on Third Rock from the Sun previously, and much of That 70s Show is a direct reflection and parody of his own life. Although the show was set in Wisconsin, Brazil grew up in upstate New York. There really was a gorgeous next-door neighbor like Donna, and Brazil did have a ditzy, sex-obsessed buddy like Kelso. Even his dad, like the gruff Red Foreman, lost his job when Brazil was a teenager. But Brazil said Eric is a funnier version of himself, quote, "My brothers and sisters watch it and love it. They think Eric looks a lot like me. I had big hair, I was skinny, and kind of sarcastic. It's funny, you think you have an unremarkable life, and then these people come together and write about it. That's what these episodes are. I'm rewriting my life better." Quote. Brazil said, "Some of the stories have been based on actual events in my life, and my first relationship was like Eric's relationship with Donna." To write scripts, Brazil mines his high school memories. Quote, "I have 3 of my yearbooks in my office, and I look through them a lot." Unquote. In terms of casting, for Topher Grace, Ashton Kutcher, Laura Prepon, and Wilmer Valderrama, this was their first professional acting job. Grace was in a high school play that Bonnie and Terry Turner had seen at their daughter's New Hampshire prep school. They remembered him when they casted the series a year later. Kutcher is from a tiny Homestead, Iowa home, but had moved to New York and landed a few commercials, and Prepon had done an experimental series on the internet. Valderrama only moved to the United States from Venezuela within the last 5 years, so he's really playing himself. The adults on the show were all veteran actors. Kurtwood Smith, Deborah Jo Rupp, Don Stark, and Tanya Roberts all had numerous gigs before, most have been in both film and television. The first episode aired on August 23, 1998, and was titled That 70s Pilot. Early episodes of the show focused on Eric Foreman, played by Topher Grace, but as popularity of the characters grew, the show quickly moved to a more ensemble cast. Tom Werner said in an interview that there was a lot of initial emphasis on the time period being the star of the show, but he was always more dedicated to the idea of the show focusing on a young man breaking away from his over-controlling dad while his peer group looked on. Much like the penitentiary and Prison Break, the era of That 70s Show is no less of a character in the show. While much coming-of-age comedy transcends decades, the 1970s has more than its fair share of unique situations that lend to the humor of the show. Many of these dealt with controversial subjects of the day: drug use, feminism and equal rights, musical changes, self-help schemes, political unrest, economic issues, and so much more. Those that lived through the era found the inclusion of these topics in That 70s Show could find themselves nodding at the issues that they too faced during that time frame. Those that were alive but too young to be part of it all could find themselves nodding too, for these were the topics their parents were talking about around the dinner table and on the phone with friends. For the much younger people watching the show, however, these topics didn't take over. The show managed to touch but not dwell on these topics very often, and that may be one of the legitimate reasons for the success of the show. Even as a period piece, the series didn't require personal involvement in the era to connect with the viewers. My wife and I watched the show when it originally aired, then my daughters watched it a half a decade later, and now my son, who is 11, is watching it, and regardless of generation or decade, they're all fans. Clever writing can only take a show so far, though. Certainly true, Will Forte turned down Saturday Night Live to continue to write for That 70s Show, but where the writing ended, the cast continued on, many to become household names, if not for the characters, for the actors playing their roles. The part of Eric Foreman was played by Topher Grace, an unknown plucked off the stage of a high school play from just a year prior to the show's inception. It wouldn't be unfair of Grace to believe the show, based on the first part of Season 1, was focused around his character. As we'll discuss later, many felt that Topher felt a bit slighted by the shift of Foreman vehicle to ensemble cast. In reality, though, as a viewer looking in, the show is really about him almost all the time, whether he's on screen or not. Even in the later seasons in which Grace and his character no longer appear, his influence is culpable and influential. Grace left the show at the end of Season 7 to play Venom on the feature film Spider-Man 3, but did make a return for the last episode of Season 8, which was also the series finale. The series had Eric go to Africa for a year with a program designed to pay for his college tuition. Actor Josh Mayers was to replace Grace as Eric Foreman in Season 8, with the gag being that Africa had changed him so much. Not wanting to offend Grace's fanbase, though, the producers instead created a new character for Josh, that of Randy Pearson, who eventually becomes Donna's love interest later in the series. Grace has continued playing smaller roles in feature films and occasionally does television work. The girl next door, Donna Pinciotti, was played by Laura Prepon in her first acting role. Based on the head writer's actual hot next-door neighborhood girlfriend, Donna's good looks and strong tomboy nature worked perfectly as a contrast to the gangly and timid Eric Foreman. Her presence also added a sexual tension among Eric's peer groups, with Fez, the foreign exchange student, often hiding in the closet, watching her as she dressed and slept. Donna was also a useful character to stir up trouble, both between Eric and his friends, as well as with his father, Red. During the series, Laura Prepon got the starring role in a feature film, Carla, based on true events of the abduction, rape, and killing of 3 young girls. As Carla Momolka, the actress needed to be blonde, so Prepon dyed her hair. This change had to be compensated for on That 70s Show, so Donna goes from being Hot Donna to Hot Blonde Donna, much to the delight of Eric's peer group. The character's change to blonde hair allowed the writers to have some fun with her character, and Donna frequently attributed her newfound worldly characteristics to the change of hair color. After that '70s show, Laura's career took off. She had her own television show, Are You There, Chelsea, which was loosely based on the life of Chelsea Handler, and she's a regular, reoccurring character on the hit show Orange is the New Black. She also appeared on many other shows as a guest star, including House MD and How I Met Your Mother. Danny Masterson, along with Mila Kunis, was really the only teen actor that had any serious acting experience. Masterson had already been well established as a thespian for 10 years when he took the job playing Stephen Hyde on that '70s show. Starting in 1988 with a guest role on Jake and the Fat Man, Danny had done a lot of television and feature film work. In fact, his part on the film The Faculty, a personal favorite of mine, had to be reduced because of his new commitment to that '70s show. Hyde's character works in the background, being a stable figure throughout the ever-changing landscape of the other characters on the show. Looking back, viewers remember him as being a conspiracy theorist, anti-establishment rebel, but if you watch the first few episodes of Season 1, you'll find a very different Hyde you probably don't remember. Masterson said it took him about 5 episodes to develop the character we've all grown to love. While the writers used Hyde's character for stability, they didn't forget about him with smaller story arcs or as a conflict character with others. Hyde makes a move on Donna, in fact ends up marrying her in Eric's It's a Wonderful Life takeoff episode, battles Kelso over Jackie, and spends a good amount of time seeking out his own identity as he learns about his estranged father over the course of the series. Masterson's career, while not as prolific as others that moved on from the show, continues to flourish. Since that '70s show, Danny has appeared in over 24 films and television shows. Easily one of the show's favorite characters, Michael Kelso, provided the majority of the comedy relief for the show. No matter how bad things were for any of the characters, Kelso would show up and irk a laugh out of the audience. Ashton Kutcher had done some modeling prior to that '70s show but had no acting experience. He was plucked for the role of Kelso by a talent scout from the University of Iowa, where he was a biochemical engineering student. Kutcher told Rolling Stone, quote, "The first 5 episodes of that '70s show, I was convinced I was going to be fired because I was terrible," unquote. The polar opposite of the actor, Kelso brought a great level of fun to the show by being not only the village idiot, but constantly managing to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. He also managed to stir up controversy when necessary by enraging Red while dating Eric's sister Lori, knocking up a librarian in the bathroom of a Molly Hatchet concert, or by finding ways to pit the teenagers against one another. Kutcher is arguably the most famous celebrity to come from that '70s show. Intelligent and a shrewd businessman, Kutcher has a laundry list of accomplishments outside of acting. With now ex-wife Demi Moore, he established a foundation combating child sex slavery around the globe. A skilled venture capitalist, Kutcher was involved with big names in tech like Skype and Airbnb. In 2010, Time magazine named Ashton one of the top 100 most influential people. Since that '70s show, Ashton Kutcher has also been a very successful actor, superseding Charlie Sheen in the smash hit show 2.5 Men and producing a show featuring many that '70s show veterans called The Ranch. Many people, including myself, consider Kutcher's best acting performance to be that of Evan, the lead in the 2004 unusual time travel film The Butterfly Effect. Kutcher was also the executive producer of the film. I highly recommend any Kutcher fans to check out the theatrical cut of the film. Like Topher Grace, Ashton wanted to move on from that '70s show and left after the first 4 episodes of Season 8 to return along with Grace in the season and series finale. Along with Kutcher, Mila Kunis became a big name thanks to that '70s show. Kunis secured the role of Jackie Beulah Burkhart by lying to the casting agents during the audition. They asked her how old she was, to which she replied, "I'll be 17 on my birthday." Of course, she didn't say which birthday. She was 7 years old when her Ukrainian family moved to the United States. She started that '70s show when she was 14. Mila has been doing television and film since 1994, including regular roles in Nick Fresno Licensed Teacher and Seventh Heaven. Despite growing up to be a full-blown hottie, Kunis grew up on the set of that '70s show. She was quoted as saying that she went through her puberty stages during the show's run, and nobody should have that part of their life forever captured on film like that. As an adult, her striking appearances earned her many placements in top 100 beauty lists from such periodicals as Maxim. In fact, she's placed in Maxim top 100 hottest women lists in several countries. The character of Jackie on the show was initially a perfect pairing with vapid, handsome Michael Kelso. The sexual and relationship tension Jackie brought to the show shouldn't be undersold, though. Some of the best episodes feature Jackie playing Hyde and Kelso off of one another for her affection, and her elitist projection offered many laughs. From complaining about Piggly Wiggly cream soda to discussing Donna's lumberjack persona, Jackie is always there to remind you just how much better she is than you, and when executed right, that is great comedy. Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher actually married on July 4th, 2015, and have 2 children together. Mila continues to act and can be heard weekly as the voice of gender-confused character Meg Griffin on Family Guy. Scene-stealing couples are not a new thing for television. Kurtwood Smith and Deborah Jo Rupp play Eric's parents, Red and Kitty Foreman, on That 70s Show. Much like the Ropers on Three's Company, it is almost as much fun to watch them child rear as it is to watch the kids navigate through life. Reginald Albert, aka Red, Foreman, is easily one of the favorites of the show by cast, crew, and fans alike. A gifted, well-versed actor, Kurtwood brings not just a familiar patriarch to the Foreman family, he is also the entire show's patriarch, and that is fun. His my way or the highway approach can be seen in dealing with his family, his subordinates at work, and even the neighbors next door. He's a hard-ass traditional family man with a military background and a vacillating chip on his shoulder about his government. Smith modeled Red Foreman after his own stepfather, who incidentally died shortly before the filming of the show. Red's catchphrase, "dumbass," is almost a thing of legend. If you go to YouTube, you can find compilations of his use of the word and all the fantastic variations the writers came up with regarding the use of foot and ass. From simply, quote, "I'm going to put my foot in your ass," unquote, to, quote, "You morons just hung a vacancy sign on your asses and my foot's looking for a room," unquote. Despite his no-nonsense approach to raising his son, Lori gets off scot-free, of course, Red has a big heart. We've seen some very touching moments involving Red and Eric. When Hyde's mom deserts him, Red takes Steven in, treating him like his own son. According to Eric Foreman, better than your own son. We can relate to Red as the everyman. He lost his job at the plant. He's out of work for months. He has to buy a foreign car because of the gas crisis. He deals with real-world problems that plagued adults of the 70s. Watching him bash Gerald Ford for pardoning Nixon is classic Red Foreman. Oddly, Kurtwood Smith is the only cast member actually from Wisconsin. Red's wife Kitty fills the neighborhood matriarch role. Performed by the lovely and talented Deborah Jo Rupp, Kitty Foreman keeps all the cogs in play. From intervening between Red and Eric's power struggles to making food for the neighbor whose wife left him, Kitty is always there. Even Eric's mom can't avoid the 70s issues of feminism, though. While the neighbor's departing wife constantly looks to be an empowered woman, Kitty is already there. Of the character, Mark Brazil said, quote, "There's a great line for Kitty where she says, 'I don't have time to be a feminist. I'm too busy running this house.' She's in charge. It's implicit in her strength that she is one. She doesn't need the label," unquote. Indeed, in one episode, when things between Red and the kids are bad, she puts her foot down and tells them she is taking her house back. Kitty Foreman is just a no-nonsense type. Kitty's infectious laugh originated by accident but caused such laughter from the cast that she kept it, and it became one of her signature items, along with being a heavy drinker and a chain smoker. As busy of an actress as Deborah Jo was before That 70s Show, she is still that busy now, with dozens of movies, television roles, and film, including a new off-Broadway production called Becoming Dr. Ruth, where Rupp plays the sexual therapist Dr. Ruth Westheimer. The underappreciated neighbors and the parents of Donna, Bob and Midge Pinciotti, are perfect support characters. Played by Dawn Stark and Tanya Roberts respectively, the often wacky duo provided not only punching bags for everyone else on the show, but let the writers have a good time with the more sultry side of the 70s. The couple were swingers, tantric sex practitioners, and pretty much tried every fad there was, from chakra alignments to fondue parties. Bob considered Red his best friend, and Midge would often hang out with Kitty and talk about things Mrs. Foreman was uncomfortable discussing. Bob was also a small business owner in the 1970s and showed us the beginnings of the big box stores coming into town and closing the little guys out. The in-show representative was called Price Mart, where both Red and Eric eventually ended up working, much to the dismay of Bargain Bob, who was forced to shut down his department store. Tanya Roberts played Bob's wife, Midge. Roberts was no stranger to film or television either. She was briefly one of Charlie's Angels and was the famous Bond girl in the film A View to a Kill. Mark Brazil said she was so perfect for the role. That was kind of true too. The girl that Donna was based on, her mother was absolutely gorgeous, unquote. There was even a Bond girl reunion episode with Christina Wayborn, Maude Adams, and Barbara Carrera as maids of honor at Midge's wedding vow renewal ceremony. The adult eye candy, Midge, was dim-witted but sweet as pie, with big doe eyes that opened wide as she was proving herself ignorant on any given topic. As Bob was struggling to keep his business afloat, Midge was struggling to find female empowerment. Midge's unhappiness with herself was timely for the writers, as Midge had to be written out of the show in 2001. On screen, Midge left Bob, but in the real world, things were more tragic. Tanya's husband was terminally ill and she had to quit the show to take care of him. Season 4, Episode 6, entitled The Relapse, featured Midge's departure. She returned to the show 2 seasons later in Season 6, Episode 25, called The Seeker, to console her daughter, Donna, after her and Eric had a big falling out. This was great timing again, as the story arc of Bob's new hot babe, Pam, Jackie's mother, played by Brooke Shields, was starting to play out. Bringing back Midge broke their relationship up and returned the house next door to parody. Incidentally, Bob was rich again by then. During one of his many crying spells, he created a device to hold tissue boxes on the visor of your car so that you could drive and cry. His invention of the Weeper Keeper regained his previous wealth and status. Both Stark and Roberts continued to act. Stark even appeared on a Greatest American Hero fan series as the Bill Maxwell character, originally performed by the late Robert Culp. While the main cast was a fantastic ensemble, there were dozens of other memorable characters that floated around Point Place, Wisconsin. Many were one-timers, but we had several great reoccurring roles as well. Shannon Elizabeth played the librarian Kelso impregnated and eventually had a baby with. Tommy Chong, who we'll talk more about in a minute, played the local drug connection and Hyde's boss at the photo hut. Eliza Dushku appeared at the radio station where Hot Donna worked. Billy D. Williams was Donna and Eric's marriage counselor, and yes, Star Wars jokes abounded. Lindsay Lohan appeared at the hair salon that Fez worked at, who he stalked, of course. Jessica Simpson played the vapid, asexual California girl for Kelso to rebound with after Jackie. Amy Adams showed up to a party at Jackie's, being every much the elitist that Jackie was. Joseph Gordon-Levitt befriends Eric and becomes his best friend, until he makes a pass at him, kissing him in his Camaro. Luke Wilson made several appearances, the creepy but sexy Casey Kelso, who briefly dates Donna. Jim Rash played the incredible character Fenton, an obviously closeted gay man that works at the jewelry store where Eric buys rings for Donna. And there are dozens more, from Betty White to Danny Bonaducci. Even Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson appears in the wrestling episode. As with so many period pieces on television, many famous celebrities of the 70s showed up as guests on that 70s show. Paul Anka and Lyle Wagner, the original Wonder Woman Steve Trevor, showed up in Kelso's van. Shirley Jones of the Partridge Family hosts a Kitty Dream Sequence variety show. Don Knotts reprises his role of Mr. Furley from Three's Company to catch the kids doing something harmless that, of course, through the door sounds dirty. Gloria Gaynor plays Fez's teacher who performs I Will Survive at a school dance. Charo makes a cameo screaming her signature, Gucci, Gucci, Gucci. She was on the Love Boat. Gene Simmons of Kiss fame made an appearance, oddly enough, though not as Eric dressed like Gene Simmons. Never figured that one out. The late Monty Hall of Let's Make a Deal fame. Ted Nugent as himself, giving Hot Donna a backstage interview, and he let her touch his guitar. His actual guitar. Alice Cooper showed up at the radio station with Donna saying they should feed her skinny boyfriend to the snake, and there are dozens more. With all the shows we deconstruct on repeat, the stories from behind the camera are just as interesting as those in front of it. The show was initially called Teenage Wasteland, and that was the title when Ashton Kutcher auditioned for the role. The name underwent several more name changes, including another Who classic title, The Kids Are All Right. In the end, it was the live audience the pilot was shot in front of that named the show. As they were walking out from the screening, they kept saying, "Oh, we just love that 70s show," and the name was born. Friendly hippie and drug connection for the kids, Leo was created specifically for and was played by actor-comedian Tommy Chong. During season 5, he had to be written out of the show because he went to jail for, you guessed it, selling marijuana paraphernalia. He returned to the show in season 7 to soften the loss of the village idiot Michael Kelso. Chong was quoted once as saying, quote, "The trouble when you're doing something illegal is that you know what you're doing. You're lying to your parents, you're lying to your kids. The only person you can't lie to is yourself," unquote. Chong took a plea bargain to do jail time to prevent his wife and son, part of his paraphernalia business, from being prosecuted. Did you know that Chong is Ray Don Chong's father? Despite sharing her first kiss on and off screen with him, Mila Kunis didn't really get along with Ashton Kutcher. Despite playing a princess, she felt Ashton got caught up in himself a little bit too much. Their friendship during the show was quite on again, off again. In the end, they married and ended up having babies together. Mila didn't date any of the eligible teens on the show, by the way. She considered them her brothers and was quoted as saying, "Ick, that would be just wrong." Wilmer Valderrama, though, did teach her how to drive, and Danny Masterson took her to her first club and bought her first drink. He was also her prom date. While the perfect cute couple on the show, Eric and Donna, or at least their real-life counterparts, didn't have all that much romantic chemistry, it would seem. In fact, Laura Prepon claimed that Topher Grace was a lousy kisser, even going so far as to claim her lesbian cohort on Orange is the New Black, actress Taylor Schilling, was a better kisser than Eric Foreman. To make matters worse, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Eric's best friend that made a move on him and kissed him, also called him a bad kisser. Poor Topher Grace, neither men nor women consider him a good kisser. Topher did make history with that kiss, as it's considered to be the first homosexual kiss on primetime television. By the way, did you know Laura is a Scientologist? Yep, she is, and has been since 1999. Clever viewers have figured out that while the show ran 8 years, the timeline of the show really only runs from 1976 to 1979, and that the license plate at the end of the show, presenting the names of Bonnie Turner, Mark Brazil, and Terry Turner, shows the year the episode was supposed to take place in. The final scene of the final episode showed the ending of the series' run, displaying the famous license plate with an 80 on it. What many don't know, though, is why the show started in 1976, which would technically only leave the show 4 years to run. The creators of the show felt the most content for the show would be plucked later in the decade, when trends and political ideologies had become firmly established. They wanted these ideologies to influence and shape the characters. Besides, the creators weren't sure that the show would even continue. It was, in fact, the only show that premiered on Fox television in 1998 that wasn't summarily canceled. Unfortunately, the timeline was loosely played with throughout the show's run. We saw more Christmases and Thanksgiving than the 4 that should have taken place. References to specific years and dates were removed from the show to help disguise the passage of time. The audience was puzzled, but it didn't seem to harm the show's popularity one little bit. It's worth noting, though, that this show isn't the only one to play fast and loose with the time continuum. Hit show MASH ran 11 seasons, despite the Korean War it depicted only lasting 3. Topher Grace was often accused of not being as close as the other cast members were with each other, whether that was due to the shifting of the show to an ensemble cast or the fact that his co-stars Kutcher, Valderrama, and Masterson were partiers, and that really wasn't Topher's thing. His leaving the show didn't win him any points with other actors either. I mentioned earlier that Topher was picked up by series creators Terry and Bonnie Turner after they saw him in a high school play, Our Town, which their daughter was performing in. They loved his comedic performance so much that when that 70s show was cast, they knew just who they wanted. But some time had passed and the Turners didn't know how to find him. He wasn't a professional actor. In fact, his plan was to become an athlete, but an injury killed that dream and he turned to the theater in high school. Once they found him, they actually faked a resume and packet to send to the studio in order to convince them to hire him for the show. He was first cast, followed by Kutcher. There were two sisters on that '70s show, one for Eric and one for Donna. Yes, Donna had a little sister named Tina Pinciotti, who appeared in a single episode of the show. Midge also mentioned having a daughter in college named Valerie. The creators decided to keep Donna an only child in the Pinciotti household, so Tina and Valerie were written off the show, curiously without explanation. Another character, Kitty's dog Shotzi, also disappeared from the show unceremoniously, but he made a return later, and Eric even commented, quote, "We still have Shotzi?" unquote. Red informed the family that he sprayed him with the hose so often that Shotzi just hid under the house. Daughter Tina was mentioned again on the show in a soap-like closer. And whatever happened to Midge's daughter Tina? All this and more on the next episode of That '70s Show. Eric's sister Lori, played by Lisa Robin Kelly, has a bit more tragic backstory. The actress left the show due to personal issues and problems with alcohol. It was a mutual decision between her and the show. Her part on the show was marginalized, and at one point, she was completely replaced with no explanation to the audience by Christina Moore. Moore performed the part 6 episodes, while Kelly had a total of 50 episodes playing Eric's sister. It was later revealed that Lisa Robin had lost a baby to a miscarriage and it devastated her life, causing her addiction to alcohol. Later, she and her husband ended up in legal trouble, and Lisa checked herself into an addiction treatment facility, but it was too late. Lisa Robin Kelly died in August of 2013 at the age of 43 due to a drug overdose. Danny Masterson tweeted, quote, "Terrible, awful news. Brilliant on '70s Show. See you next time, LRK. Kisses," unquote. That '70s Show was nominated for over 75 awards. Over a dozen of them were Primetime Emmys. They only won once, though, for Outstanding Costume Design for a Series. Brazil said Costumes and Wardrobe actually won the Emmy. It's not just a sitcom. You have to really find things to be true to the period. It's harder than your average sitcom. You've got to go to thrift shops and go to eBay. You have to search and really commit to the period," unquote. Deborah Jo Rupp, during the first season of the show, had her own hair done in the style of Kitty's, but her hair quickly became damaged and she ended up doing the rest of the series with a wig. Did you know that the last episode of That '70s Show, she wore the same clothes as she did for the first episode? The infamous circle the teens would gather around and presumably smoke weed was born out of necessity. The network wouldn't allow the creators to show drug use or even really refer to drugs, so the creators invented the replacement Puff Puff Pass circle. You never saw the weed, the kids smoking it, or any paraphernalia present. Calling it the stash or the stuff turned out to actually be more funny, and it was always hidden by a paper bag. The circle did have smoke, though. In fact, it was strawberry scented, and the real cigarette smokers in the group, Masterson, Prepon, and Kutcher, would use the sweet scent cover to hide their actual smoke breaks between takes. The circle became a character of its own, and many laughs were generated within it. The 100th episode of That '70s Show is easily one of my favorites. At that time, there was a movement where serious television shows would do some sort of musical episode. The movement hit, and That '70s Musical was conceived, featuring Valderrama's Fez singing in a spring fling musical. But all the cast joined in, and even The Who's Roger Daltrey comes on, not to sing or perform, but to act as Fez's unpleasant music teacher. The cast performs hit songs such as Love Hurts, Happy Together, and The Joker. Voice doubles are used for some of the cast members in some songs, but even Kurtwood Smith and Deborah Jo Rupp lend their voices and dance in a couple of numbers. By the way, 100 episodes is a milestone in the industry. 100 episodes are advantageous for strip syndication because it allows for 20 weeks of weekday reruns, depending on the number of episodes produced once the program debuts in syndication, without repeating an episode, and such shows can be sold for higher per-episode pricing. Broadcasting syndication is the license to broadcast these television programs by multiple television stations and radio stations without going through a broadcast network. A rivalry between Grace and Kutcher seemed to grow over the course of the show and was probably largely responsible for its demise. The writer started giving Kutcher more lines, encroaching on Grace's on-screen time, and then they both did films which released at the same time, Ashton in the aforementioned Butterfly Effect, and Topher in the film Tad Hamilton. Kutcher was number 1 that week, and Grace was number 3. Both were interested in leaving after season 6, but they both agreed to come back and give the show one extra season. Season 8 was a Hail Mary, but Fox took a chance and continued to be amongst the highest-rated sitcoms on television. But everybody knew it was just a countdown to the end. The 200th episode of That 70s Show was its last. Titled That 70s Finale, the series' final episode aired on May 18, 2006. The entire series is available on home video, including DVD and Blu-ray, as well as digital. On repeat, we often discuss the featured show's theme song, and this episode will be no exception. But music has a bigger place on That 70s Show, so we need to do a lot more deconstruction to cover everything. The show's opening song is called In the Street, which was co-written and originally performed by Alex Chilton, frontman for the band Big Star. This isn't the version that graced the opening credits of That 70s Show, however. A cover version was performed for all 8 seasons of the show, but the version of the cover changed after season 1. Todd Griffin, formerly of the Graveyard Train Band, performed the revamped cover originally, but was replaced in season 2 through 8 by popular 70s band Cheap Trick. Fortunately, it isn't who covers the song that necessarily gets paid. While Cheap Trick lightly got some scratch for their performance, Alex Chilton received $70 every single time the song aired on television. Chilton always thought it was ironic that his song made him $70 based on the name of the show it was aired on. The "Hello, Wisconsin!" yelled at the end of the television intro was originally Danny Masterson for season 1. Subsequent seasons are not documented anywhere that I could find in my research, but if you listen closely enough though, it very well could be Ashton Kutcher that says it. Speaking of the intro, I always liked how the intro was overlaid on the audio track, so it often seemed like it was played in reaction to the previous scene. That intro, by the way, changed many times over the years. The kids in the car motif stayed in play until season 8, where it dramatically changed to a 360-degree view of the remaining cast. The intro in season 8 changed at least 3 times. The original change, a change when Tommy Chong rejoined the cast, and once again after Mayers officially joined the cast as Randy. I have to hand it to the editors though, they did a great job. It's very hard to detect unless you're looking for it. Let's take a listen. Here's the original Big Star version of the song. Almost doesn't sound like the same song, does it? Let's listen to Todd Griffin's cover version. And finally, here's the Cheap Trick version, which, by the way, introduced the "We're all right" at the end, a nod to their song, Surrender. Music was a big part of teen life in the 70s, and the kids on That 70s Show were, by and large, into it, with the exception of Jackie, who loves Todd Rundgren and thinks Lead of Led Zeppelin is hot. While most of the male teens agreed on the bands that rocked, Fez was consistently under fire for liking other music like Leo Sayer, Anne Murray, and disco tracks. Liking the wrong music or not knowing enough about music would often lead to ridicule and ribbing, such as when Eric was on his Styx kick and waited in line, which turned out to be no line, to see them perform. Unfortunately for shows that often focus on music, licensing for audio tracks can be extremely expensive and restrictive. According to TuneFind, season 1 of the show featured almost 90 licensed tracks from big names, but by the time the show wound down to season 8, only 4 songs were licensed, and 2 of those were used for the finale. Those songs were 13 by Big Star and Hello It's Me by Todd Rundgren. The previous 2 seasons only had 10 tracks, while oddly, season 4 had the second highest number of tracks, clocking in at 69. Licensing is also piecemealed out with music. Rights to a song for broadcast costs a different, and less I assume, amount than licensing a song for broadcast and for home release. Many times, music is only licensed for broadcast and is subsequently replaced when the show goes into a home release status. The release to DVD by Fox contained many edited episodes, not just a large replacement of music, but the editing of some content as well, although there are no easy lists out there to reference exactly what those were. Estimates are that the DVD release contained a little over 50% of the original music. Mill Creek Entertainment released the show in its entirety on Blu-ray, with original syndicated episodes, but still had to suffer from some music licensing issues. According to their press release about the box set, the blue set contains, quote, most, unquote, of the original music, so while it isn't complete, it's as close as possible in home release form. While not technically music related, there's one big omission of audio in the home releases of the series. About 11 minutes into Season 5, Episode 19, Kelso tells Fez he's going to make him man-pretty. A cutaway to a black and white training-style film is shown, with a voiceover announcer making comments while Kelso tries to transform Fez.
Before an important date, a man should always make sure that he is properly cleaned and groomed. A good shampoo always includes a careful inspection for lice and ticks. No girl likes an unexpected parasite. Right, Kelso?
The voiceover is completely missing from all the home releases of the episode, and without it, the scene seems out of place and pointless. The announcer appears in other episodes without his voice missing. It's very curious why this edit is there. The last little bit of trivia for you in the music department. Season 5 episodes all shared titles with Led Zeppelin tunes. For Season 6, The Who was honored. The Rolling Stones were represented in Season 7. For Season 8, it was Queen. Really, go check it out. Of course, the finale episode of Season 8 was not a Queen song title, it was simply That 70s Finale. That 70s show was so popular that Carsey Warner Television took it to Britain. Titled Days Like These, the British version of the show was nearly line for line perfect to the American show, with the exception of the replacements of pop culture and social icons. In Days Like These, for example, Prince Charles was visiting town, not President Gerald Ford. While 13 episodes were apparently made, only 10 of them actually aired. You can find these episodes on YouTube. To close this episode of Repeat, I want to share with you a couple of my favorite episodes and thoughts on That 70s Show. Besides Red's trademarked foot in the ass gags, another running gag was one of my favorites. Kelso would scream the word "burn" anytime somebody got slapped down or spanked on the show. In one episode, Red is going to go ice fishing, and when Kitty says she's coming along with him, Red says, "Never mind, I don't want to go." Kelso, who was playing with a golf club at the time, cocked it like a shotgun and screamed, "Burn!" Every time I see that episode, I have to roll it back a couple of times. It always makes me laugh. In one case, the burn was about a burn. Donna and Jackie burned themselves to a crisp trying to get a tan to compete with Eric's hot cousin. When a burn is made, Kelso says, "That's a burn about a burn. That's a second-degree burn." In another episode, Kelso uses Jackie's panties to torment Hyde on multiple occasions, claiming that burn is on tour. I loved the musical episode, and pretty much any time they did cutaways of the teens doing other roles from popular shows. They did parodies of All in the Family. Ashton should have won an award for his portrayal of Meathead. Dead on. I Love Lucy, Fez is an amazing Ricky Ricardo, Charlie's Angels, Grease, and plenty more I'm sure I forget. The spoof of It's a Wonderful Life featured an angel showing Eric what it would be like if he and Donna never kissed or got together. When Eric says, "Can I wake up now?" the angel says, "Oh, you may never wake up. This might be a coma dream." That episode features Fez dressed in 80s regalia, including parachute pants. Remember those? We also get to see Big Rhonda's actress not fattened up for her role, and she actually looks pretty good. Before Lisa Robin Kelly had to leave the show, there was a lot of great sibling rivalry between Eric and Lori. During one typical slam argument between them, Eric suddenly tries to smother her with a couch pillow and looks around like he's worried about being caught. The whole scene cracks me up every single time I see it. It might be among my top 10 favorite moments in That 70s Show overall. There were several episodes that for some reason didn't air very often in syndication, and those became exciting to see when they did show up. The Eric's Hot Cousin episode rarely seemed to air, and Hyde's Christmas Rager seemed to be on some do not show lists too. Season 2's fall episode Halloween is another one that aired very infrequently, despite the Too Young to Trick or Treat or Too Young to Die episode turning up in rotation all the time. The Halloween episode is one of my favorites. The kids visit their burned down elementary school and find secret files that were kept on all the students, including them. This is where we find out that Jackie's real middle name is Beulah. Eric's Drunken Tattoo, easily in my top favorite episodes of all time. Eric reads Donna's journal and finds out she wishes Eric was a little more dangerous, like Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. He gets a tattoo on his butt of which he hopes is Donna's name. Leo did the tattoo, so who knows, and envisions him telling her about it. In this dream sequence, he kicks the door to her room in dressed as Steven Tyler and does a dead-on impression of the rock star to Walk This Way. If you're a fan of that 70s show and somehow you've missed this, now is the time to go back and watch it. Topher Grace's Aerosmith performance is isolated on YouTube, but you'll have to go elsewhere to see the full episode. With 200 episodes to choose from, I could literally do an entire show just on my favorites, but that should be enough to get us through this edition of Repeat. That 70s show had and still has a huge following. The cast members are still stopped on the street, and many of them look back fondly at their time with their on-screen family. During the shooting of the final episode, many retakes were required because cast members, especially Laura Prepon, couldn't stop crying. Many of the cast settled in on Ashton Kutcher's show, The Ranch, so you can still see a lot of them together. But the ensemble cast in the area of the 70s show made it unforgettable and a timeless period piece that will live on for decades to come. Oddly enough, during the writing of this episode, it was revealed that a 70s show reunion movie may be in the works. Fans take hope we might be meeting in Point Place once again. Each episode of Repeat is the result of nearly a dozen hours of research, writing, recording, and producing. If you enjoy this body of work, consider contributing to the show on Patreon, a service that provides digital artists a means to be compensated for their creativity. Visit www.patreon.com/repeat for more information. I'm Shane R. Monroe. Thank you for listening to Repeat.